Tamarisk, a port city in Alabasta, is a major city known as the Eastern Port and is one of Alabasta's 3 main ports. A girl in a loose cloak carefully walked through a dark alley. There was a tall man in a cloak. The man removed his hood, revealing golden curly hair and a serious face. The girl also removed her hood, letting her long blue hair fall freely over her shoulders. She complained, "Truly, I can hardly recognize Alabasta. Igram, is there a way to pass the identity check?" The two wanted to board a cargo ship and cross the Sandora River to reach Rainbase, but they didn't have identity cards. Alabasta's essence was etched in their words and actions. If they claimed to be outsiders, absolutely no one would believe them, but if they said they were from Alabasta, how could they not have any identifying information? Igram got for a moment and said, "His Royal Highness, His Majesty the King issued an order for a population census and created something called identity cards. We cannot reveal our identities. Therefore, identity cards are certainly unavailable to us, but temporary identifications can be obtained. Their period of use is short, but it will suffice for us." Vivi pulled out a mobile phone and opened the Taoxiao app. According to news reports, Crocodile has been silent for several months. What on earth is he planning? He clearly had big ambitions when my father was on the throne. Now we can expose him as planned. Evidence of crimes is needed. Your Majesty, now that His Majesty the King is occupied with developing all of Alabasta, we can only rely on ourselves for this matter. Even if it's difficult. I've already contacted Baroque Works. It seems they are very short on people. We'll just join them. We can definitely find evidence of Crocodile's schemes, Igram suggested. The two of them left the alley and headed towards a fortress. After they departed, a young man in a blue shirt emerged from the shadows. It was Ezekiel, who was concerned for Vivi's safety and had finally found her. Pell stepped out from behind him, saying with some embarrassment, "Your Majesty, I'm not very skilled in reconnaissance tasks, and I still have municipal work to do. It took a long time to locate the princess." Ezekiel nodded. It was true that Pell was handling too much, but the 4 members of the Tsumadri unit were not suited for such work. Shaka bore a heavier burden, and the old King Cobra was responsible for a new project. During the construction of the 1,000-kilometer River of Life, there was no one left idle. It seems it's time to recruit some talents. Not just for reconnaissance, but also people who can venture out to sea. He carefully considered the individuals who, in the original manga, could be regarded as talents and who still had a chance to be recruited, finding that there were not that many after all. The emperors are among them. Although in the end the royal family of Alabasta does not wish to become traitors to the celestial dragons. However, it would not be difficult for Ezekiel to gain their recognition, much like Luffy did. There's also Knight of the Sea Jin, who should currently be a member of the Shishibukai, and before he meets Luffy, Ezekiel has a very high chance of finding and recruiting him. Your Majesty, aren't you going to catch up with her? Pell asked. Pell clearly understood that Ezekiel's strength was incomparable, even to that of a Marine Admiral. Of course, he would not be afraid of Crocodile, but he did not intend to bring Vivi back, which somewhat surprised Pell. She has reached the age where she should live her own life. One day, she will meet someone to whom she can entrust her life. In reality, Ezekiel did not want to ruin Vivi's meeting with Luffy, which was indeed a good experience for her. But Ezekiel and Pell came to Tamarisk not just because of Vivi, but because there appeared some suspicious signs of mobile phone sales there. And this was something Ezekiel could not miss in Alabasta. It was produced by the world government. They approached a recently opened shop somewhere in the port and saw something that looked almost exactly like a mobile phone, but Will wasn't sure if it could be classified as such. He had already mentally prepared himself for the possibility that the mobile phone could be copied. However, due to the Grand Line's magnetic field and climate, he assumed it wouldn't be so quick. But the scene before him greatly surprised him. One could say that the world government had put a lot of effort into this, otherwise, such a thing could not have appeared in this place at this time. Even before Ezekiel entered, the vendor opened the doors. "Sir, are you interested in a mobile phone? This is a new mobile phone developed by the world government's Department of Research and Development, which can provide communication over a certain distance. The price is only 3,000 berries plus 150 berries per month. Ezekiel was surprised. And what is the communication range? He asked sharply. The smile on the vendor's face grew wider, and he coughed. It can probably reach a distance of 30 kilometers. But, 30 kilometers in the city is more than sufficient. That's an extremely limited communication range. Does it support news and forums? Yes, and it's even more powerful than a mobile phone produced in Alabasta. The vendor opened the mobile phone in a familiar way. It wasn't a color screen or an ordinary black and white screen, but a monotone low-color display. It had news and even photographs, something that Ezekiel's phone couldn't do yet. However, the forum was a very unfortunate copy, so the vendors didn't focus on it. This forum only allowed communication between people within a 30-kilometer radius. Then Ezekiel was partially reassured. There's no doubt that even with the world government's scientific and technological resources, scientists claiming to have surpassed the world's scientific research capabilities by 500 years still cannot replicate his mobile phone, at least not in a short period. But the world government is clearly working on it, although it might not have any connection to the Marines. Perhaps the world government has uncovered the secret of the royal family of Alabasta's ability to construct the River of Life, plus the previous failure of CP9, which is why it has used existing technological reserves to create this phone. Continually sending people to Alabasta, an extremely important transport port, allows for establishing a base station. Ezekiel is convinced that to start something of this nature would require a stationary base station. Clock tower. Toto looked wearily at the documents he held in his hand. In front of him stood a tall man with an indifferent expression, dressed in the world government's uniform, and he didn't know why he appeared in Alabasta again. Since Koza forced the rebels to surrender, his father Toto, who was the former leader of Ubuk, was transferred to the more important eastern port. World government. Why not address this issue directly with His Majesty the King? Toto asked cautiously. His Majesty is too busy. Such trivial matters do not require direct communication with him. The world government is merely selling mobile phones and tamarisk and ensuring the security of Alabasta, the man added solemnly. Toto simply felt the visitor was very unfriendly, but he couldn't pinpoint the problem. After all, he didn't know that the world government and Alabasta were already in a state of Cold War of mutual animosity. Zalul from the Special Department of the World Government knows more. At the very least, he knows that the world government wants to do business in Alabasta, and that the royal family of Alabasta is highly wary of the world government. The world government will not openly command against the king, but will instead open channels one by one in many cities, flooding Alabasta with its mobile phones. Toto, do you want to challenge the orders of the world government on behalf of Alabasta? I cannot represent Alabasta. There will always be only one person who can represent Alabasta. Toto shook his head calmly, and that is His Majesty the King of Alabasta. Zalul looked a little embarrassed. As one who carries out the orders of the world government, he had traveled the seas and the grand waterways. No country dared to resist him, but he hadn't expected to be challenged here today. Even if the King of Alabasta stood before him, he wouldn't allow anyone to speak to him like this. Chairman Toto Alabasta is also a member of the world government. You are obliged and must comply with the orders of the world government. This is not a request, but a notification. So, whether you agree or not, the goal of the world government will not change, Zalul said coldly. And what can the world government offer us? Will's voice echoed through the town hall, and Toto immediately bowed. Your Majesty, he exclaimed, unsurprised as he had been communicating with Ezekiel via mobile phone before the guest's arrival. Therefore, he neither directly refused the world government nor agreed, simply wanting the king to handle the matter himself. After all, it was the world government, and no one could make decisions except the king. Are you the King of Alabasta? Zalul recognized him the moment he saw Ezekiel. He was the only one wearing a crown and cloak in the town hall. Zalul bowed. He was a member of CP. This was the first time he had seen Ezekiel at first glance. The king appeared to be someone whose opinion could not be ignored, and the intelligence from the world government indicated that this was a country even CP9 could not provoke. Does the world government want to sell mobile phones in Alabasta? Ezekiel asked directly. Your Majesty. I believe the world government holds such power. Zalul didn't answer directly. I can agree if the world government agrees to. One condition, Will said with a smile. Zalul was surprised by this response. According to world government intelligence, mobile phones were Ezekiel's most important business. Without the income from mobile phones, the river of life would collapse instantly, and the kingdom's rule would sink to the bottom. The country is already engulfed in war. What do you want? Zalul asked. I want Crocodile to leave this country, Ezekiel stated firmly. Crocodile is always a hidden danger. If he's allowed to stay in Alabasta, he'll learn that it wasn't Okiji who defeated him that day. Of course it would be nice to kill him, but Ezekiel knows that's not the best solution since this guy is considered a hero. I'm afraid that won't work. After all, that man is one of the warlords recognized by both the world government and the Marines. Zalul directly refused, knowing that the world government's subsequent plans involve using this Shishibukai. Ezekiel smiled and finally expressed what he truly wanted. Then I want the King of Alabasta to always have at least one strong person from the Marines. I mean a truly strong Marine. He needs to possess the strength of the 3 admirals, or even the might of a person like Garp. Zalul paused for a moment and sighed. This was purely due to the calmness and wisdom Ezekiel displayed. In his view, Ezekiel should be aware of the world government's stance toward him, and it would be odd if he didn't want Crocodile to leave. Nevertheless, the young king could clearly distinguish between the Marines and the world government. After all, within the world government, there is too much darkness, despised by those Marines who claim to represent justice. However, if a Marine with a strong sense of justice were indeed sent here, it could eventually have a significant impact on Crocodile's mission. For instance, if Crocodile were to openly attempt to kill the king, would an admiral intervene? I can only relay this for you, but the specific decision will depend on the high-ranking officials of the world government. Zalul saw in Ezekiel one of the greatest kings he had ever encountered, but it was unfortunate that the Alabasta royal family was destined to be destroyed. Zalul was following the orders of the world government, and he could not deviate from them in matters concerning Alabasta. Ezekiel watched his back, knowing that the world government would agree to this condition because the Marines are merely a tool in the hands of the world government. The world government has too many ways to lure him into the camp of evil and abduct honest Marines to show him what true justice is in this world. Of course, less than a day later, Zalul provided a definite answer. But they also had one condition. To ensure your personal safety, the world government has decided to send an excellent Marine, but we also hope that you will allow the sale of mobile phones developed by the world government in Alabasta. Oh. Ezekiel smiled softly. Of course, that's all right. Zalul kindly saluted and departed. He really liked this king, who wasn't bothered by the other schemes. Even though he knew the world government had no good intentions, he still generously agreed. He showed basic respect. It was admirable. Ezekiel watched Zalul's disappearing back, his face shifting from a forced smile to a cold expression. He still wasn't quite used to wearing such a fake mask. A fake phone, trying to compete with a real mobile phone that will evolve into the true era of smartphones. It's just ridiculous. As for the Marine Academy established by Marine Headquarters, Black Arm Zephyr resigned from his position as the Academy's chief instructor. Although he is over 70 years old, due to his relatives and students being killed one by pirates, he decided to return to the sea and intends to start creating resistance against pirates. All of this relies on the mechanical right arm repaired by V. Gapung. The world government placed enough trust in this former admiral, who dedicated his life to the Marines. At the same time, they believed he was strong enough to suppress everything in Alabasta, so they sent him on a special mission. Surveillance of the King of Alabasta, suspected of betraying the world government. Looking at the mission letter in his hand, a faint smile appeared on Zephyr's aged face. He thought of the little boy king he had met before. Did he expect that 10 years later, that boy would become someone even the world government feared? Betraying the world government is indeed a big deal. Upon learning about this, Zephyr actually wanted to teach a lesson to this young king who had once dabbled in pirate games. Everyone knows Zephyr's family perished at the hands of pirates. Everyone knows Zephyr's students were killed by pirates. Everyone knows. Who he hates most are pirates. Thinking about this, Zephyr walked down the street in the darkness. No one could see him clearly. When Zephyr arrived in Alabasta with his apprentice, and almost a month had passed. During this time, Alabasta's population census had been underway for a month, and finally, results emerged. Alabasta was now home to 212 million people. Although not as many as imagined in this age, it's still beyond imagination. The massive number of inhabitants relies entirely on the Sandora River, otherwise, sustaining such a vast population would be absolutely impossible. The number of mobile phone users finally reached 5 million, leading to significant updates. Mobile Fruit, Level 6. Current number of users, 5 million. Mobile phone memory 220 GB, flash 600 GB. With 4G network capability. Download speed is 800 KB/sec. Download range 100 km. Features. Loading new features. Updating applications. Creating mid-level applications. Transfer copies via Bluetooth. The network upgraded to 4G, allowing updates, and the application creation level was elevated from basic to mid-level. It can be said that this was a significant breakthrough. Ezekiel realized that he had successfully transitioned from the text era to the era of photos and video. He could install a function to upload videos and photos to the forum, and even offer the ability for each mobile phone user to upload and download photos and videos. If everyone has a mobile phone, to what level can my mobile fruit reach? If this power is fully unleashed, I could even compete with the emperors. Alabasta might truly be worthy of the title Super Kingdom. Ezekiel stared at the data in amazement. He felt he could change his mindset to develop the country. How can a world with such a vast workforce be so mediocre in terms of infrastructure? The mobile fruit is a fruit that never existed in this world, and it never could have appeared. It's not just about the power of the devil fruit itself, but about its user, Ezekiel, who possessed knowledge of Earth's millennia-old civilization, and used its knowledge as a model. The wonders he expanded and applied to this world. In other words, he could completely recreate in his mind a technological world reliant on the internet, using an even more powerful mobile phone, 10 times, 100 times more powerful. Someday, the phone will become the only satellite in the world, the only supercomputer. All data will be collected there, and everything will be resolved in his mind. Woohoo! With the sound of the long blast from the ancient palace horn, officials in grand new style attire entered the renovated ancient palace one after another under the shining sun. This is a government decree issued by the new king. Officials with established identifications and status in the royal capital must attend the royal capital once a week for a grand meeting. Sunlight shines inside, bringing some warmth to the slightly cold palace, which had been musty for a long time. "Your Majesty," said Mighty, one of the few maids in the palace, as she knocked on the door and respectfully brought toiletries. "Everyone is waiting for you." Mighty had previously served Vivi. After Vivi left, she was dispatched to care for the new king by the chef and the royal seamstress Terracotta, the wife of a groom, who looked almost like him. Ezekiel was still not accustomed to being taken care of. When Mighty entered his room with a few newly hired maids, he had already dressed early. Mighty looked at Ezekiel with a scorching gaze. His figure, his face, and even every strand of hair were so noble. He was the unmatched king who had just ascended the throne, leading Alabasta on a glorious path. And even though everything was just beginning, every person from Alabasta was full of confidence and trust in the king. He is the true king given to Alabasta. Ezekiel was already used to being looked at. Over these past few months, he has been steadily growing accustomed to his identity. One day he will stand atop the heavens and look down upon all living beings. Even now, he is a ruler who commands over hundreds of millions of people. Ezekiel stepped out of the room as Pell, one of the 6 main guards protecting Alubarna, waited respectfully by the door. He took the breakfast bread offered by Mighty and said to Pell as he walked, "Pell, I've already mentioned that the weekly meetings start after 9 in the morning, yet it's only 8 now. Just to pay tribute to your heroism, not only I but all the officials are already waiting for you, Your Majesty." Pell smiled slightly. The title of king grows heavier and heavier, but there are moments when Ezekiel still wishes for the freedom and ease that cannot be erased from his nature. Yet now, he is a true king. Ezekiel took a towel and wiped himself, then handed it to Mighty with a smile and said nothing more. Finally, he donned the black cloak with golden trim that symbolized the identity of an emperor and entered the palace hall with a determined stride. The honor guard lined up on both sides greeted the king. Ezekiel walked along the red carpet, looking at the people on both sides. Everyone bowed and knelt. Your Majesty. The palace hall was no longer as empty as before. Over 30 cities had been reintegrated, a vast labor force was liberated, and military power was unprecedentedly strengthened. The population reached hundreds of millions, marking the initial stage of centralization. Ezekiel approached the throne step by step, turned, and looked at the restructured black official uniform because he personally liked the color black. At last, he felt like an emperor. Although Ezekiel did not demand kneeling in this world, the basic ceremony of kneeling on one knee is strictly observed when meeting the king. Rise, he said. Everyone stood up. This ancient greeting for the King of Alabasta was rarely used during King Cobra's time, not only because of King Cobra's kindness but also due to the weakening of power caused by a lack of centralization. But with such a high degree of centralization now, Imperial Majesty has reached its pinnacle. Your Majesty, 34 cities of Alabasta have opened banks and the issuance of the new currency is underway. Although the new currency we're issuing is still not as popular as berries, reported the Minister of Finance. In the end, the new currency can only be used in Alabasta. That's quite understandable. Don't rush. Ezekiel smiled and motioned for the next report. Your Majesty, the current census has concluded. Your Majesty, the army is now very enthusiastic, and many wish to meet with you personally. Your Majesty, the special Sumadri unit has been disbanded. Would you like to create a new special unit? The burial hall needs guarding. These state matters had previously been discussed by the officials, but the final decision would be made here by Ezekiel. Fortunately, he was not a weak emperor, neither in strength nor in grandeur, unlike Cobra. He possessed the level of an admiral, so even while managing state affairs, he didn't feel fatigue. After the meeting with His Majesty, all the officials were now busy, and Ezekiel returned to his room. There are still too few top-class talents in Alabasta. Reflecting on this, Ezekiel began considering how to recruit some talents. Currently, 4 members of the Sumadri unit have risen to the top, and only Pel and Shaka could barely handle them. The talents available at present. Ezekiel silently wrote a few names on paper. Trafalgar Law. Jin. These 2 could be recruited because they have their own goals to achieve. The first seeks revenge, the second, protection. But in reality, it's easier said than done. If you want to recruit Law, you must deal with the heavenly Yaksha Daflamaho, and to recruit Jin, you need to face the emperors. Just like thinking of the last person, Ezekiel's pen paused and froze in his hand, the paper turning into crystals and finally crumbling into powder at absolute zero. Your Majesty, the person sent by the world government has arrived, came Midi's voice from behind the door. Ezekiel replied, let him into the palace hall. The door to the palace hall slowly opened, and as a tall and stout figure entered, Ezekiel, who had been distracted, suddenly became alert. He fixed his gaze on the old man. Purple hair stuck out in all directions like a hedgehog, dark glasses sat on a wrinkled old face, and a massive mechanical right arm gleamed with a cold metallic shine. The heavy breathing and pounding heartbeat emanated from this powerful and robust body, undoubtedly radiating battle strength akin to an admiral's. Former Admiral Black Arm Zephyr. Long time no see, Your Majesty, King of Alabasta. Zephyr smiled, revealing white teeth. This smile did not hold any favor in Will's heart. Although Zephyr addressed him as king, there was no respect in it. It was truly amusing. Did the world government really send such a thorn? At this time, Zephyr had not yet rebelled against the Marines. He left the Marines after Luffy went to sea. But he still stirred animosity, almost as ruthless as a Kainu. Though you are an envoy sent by the world government, you are still in the presence of our King of Alabasta. Mighty couldn't hold back and said discontentedly. With her experience and knowledge, she certainly wasn't aware of the character standing before them. Little girl, Zephyr turned to look at Mighty. He is your king, not my king. Mighty, step out. This is the former Marine Admiral Black Arm Zephyr, Will said with a broad smile on his face. Black Arm Zephyr. Mighty didn't know what that name meant, but she understood the 4 words former Marine Admiral, and her face suddenly turned pale as she became a bit flustered. Apologies, she quickly said, bowing her head. Prepare a room for Mr. Zephyr. Will waved his hand. Yes, Your Majesty. Mighty turned and left. There was a hint of panic in Zephyr's eyes. He stared intently at Will through his sunglasses. The maid's concern wasn't due to fear, but rather a worry about offending the king. King of Alabasta, Ezekiel. It seems this old man will have to change his mind about you. It seems you're a good king. He altered his previous demeanor and spoke a bit more kindly. Yes, said Ezekiel with a golden smile. Wait, Zephyr, wait till the time when the Marines and the world government, which you consider the foundation of justice, deliver the most painful and deadly blow to you, causing the world you held for 70 years to completely collapse. When the time comes, it will be clear to you. As a gift, Ezekiel naturally gave Zephyr a mobile phone. A phone. An amusing toy. Zephyr smiled and turned it over in his hands. Just like people on Earth who first saw a mobile phone, he viewed it merely as a tool for making calls. Only decades later did people realize the fear of being at the mercy of mobile phones. Zephyr wasn't concerned about any monitoring capabilities the phone might have. According to his worldview, he couldn't grasp the concept of control being achieved through a machine. The technology in this world was underdeveloped, and the development of networks was nearly at a 0 stage. Once, Zephyr was superstitious about the capabilities of the human body, but after acquiring a mechanical arm, he became interested in science and technology. So, he studied the phone for a long time. After Zephyr returned to his room, Ezekiel finally received the notification he had been waiting for. The numbers were nearly the same as Okiji's. Enhanced Armament Haki 60 GB. Enhanced Observation Haki 50 GB. Enhanced Rokushki 50 GB. Compared to Okiji's abilities at 100 GB, the 2 Haki and Rokushki combined to make 160 GB. This clearly proved that the Haki of Black Arm Zephyr greatly surpasses Okiji and the other 3 admirals. If not for his physical limitations, Zephyr would never have been killed by Kazaru. Would you like to start the download? The message appeared. Ezekiel decided to start the download. In the end, he already had an understanding of Haki at 20 GB. It's impossible that the 20 GB and 50 GB versions wouldn't be somewhat similar. After all, it's still Haki with the same foundation. Will 220 GB / 600 GB. Enhanced Freezing Fruit 100 GB. Swordsman's Application 60 GB. Enhanced Armament Haki 20 GB. Enhanced Observation Haki 20 GB. Enhanced Rokushki 20 GB. Starting download. Current network speed is 800 KB/sec. After some waiting, the Armament Haki weighed 80 GB, and the Observation Haki was 70 GB. The total used storage reached 370 GB. Judging by the overall memory capacity, he nearly doubles the Admiral level, but in terms of overall combat power, Ezekiel considers that he hasn't shattered the absolute strength of an Admiral level. It can only be said that he is more dominant in power. After all, he has almost no combat experience at this stage, and even for a long period in the future, he may find it difficult to gain opportunities to accumulate combat experience, which could become a fatal flaw. Ezekiel's fingertips tapped on the armrest of the throne. What should I do? Everything is progressing rapidly. All of Alabasta is changing every day, changing at a speed visible to the naked eye, even far surpassing the era of the golden reforms in Earth's China. In the end, the physical strength of people in this world is several times greater than that of people on Earth. A guy who does a few exercises can defeat 1,000 soldiers. It's called a miracle to build a building on Earth in 7 days. In this world, it might be astonishing to build a building a day. The robot Frankie built a bridge in a flash. All of this is enough to show that there is no shortage of labor in this world. The main thing is its proper use. Zephyr was pondering using his mobile phone. He spent a whole 3 hours registering his nickname. Ezekiel couldn't understand why such a decisive old man struggled for so long with his name. Why not just put Z? Damn it. I'll try Zephyr. Already taken. That's my name. Zephyr Blackhand. No. Zifa. No way. Confused to the extreme, Zephyr finally settled on his nickname choice. Superhero who kills pirates. Seeing the name, Ezekiel smiled. Superhero who kills pirates. He knew that Zephyr's greatest desire since childhood was to become a hero, but that name was just too terrible. Zephyr, you've been found out. Zephyr logged into Taoxiao and immediately saw urgent news. Attention. Attention. Former Marine Admiral Black Arm Zephyr has arrived in Alabasta. Is former Marine Admiral going to help guard Alabasta? The life of Admiral Zephyr is full of jealousy and hatred. Zephyr nodded. Not too outrageous, mostly true, and largely the same as what's in the newspapers. It seems the mobile phone is really a good thing. It can reduce a lot of unnecessary expenses. Then he opened the forum. Until then, he got of the mobile phone as just a tool for obtaining information, much like a TV den mushy. In the forum, he saw. Admiral Zephyr really arrived in Alabasta. He's my idol. Unknown young marine. Great. Alabasta has become safer. A survivor of a sandstorm. Maybe it's done to keep an eye on the hypocritical hero. After all, a warlord is still a pirate. Old bastard Zephyr. You killed my father. I'm in Alabasta now. Is there anyone who wants to arrest me? Super Big Pirate. Seeing Super Big Pirate's words, Zephyr was furious, his face reddening, veins bulging as he quickly typed on the phone's virtual keyboard. Super Big Pirate, this is Zephyr. Do you dare to reveal who you really are? Superhero who kills pirates. Speaking of mobile phone input methods, currently, there are only two. One is the T9 method, and the other is the handwriting input method. Most people still use handwriting input. After all, T9 is too advanced for this world. But Ezekiel plans to promote an intelligent input method similar to T9 in the future. You're Zephyr. That old dog still pretending to be a superhero. Don't you dare lie, I am Zephyr. If you are Zephyr, then I'm the one who will kill you. If you have the courage, give me your phone number. This confrontation is even more dramatic than Ezekiel had imagined. After all, the users of his phones include pirates, marines, and countless ordinary people. In the real world, there are ups and downs. In the world of the forum, it's only words. If you write them, you become the winner. So even a strong admiral like Zephyr can be overwhelmed by an ordinary person who doesn't even have the strength of a chicken. In some ways, this world is truly fair. The confrontation between them quickly reached a rhythm, forming several main groups: those who support the Marines, those who support the pirates, those who support neither side, and those who support both sides. Countless different opinions gradually distorted Zephyr's expression. After spending the entire night in conversation on the forum, Zephyr was exhausted, his face unhappy and angry. Ultimately, regardless of how strong an admiral is, the insults of people are not deterred by strength. Gradually, he realized that the forum is an extremely dark place, revealing the evil within everyone. When people can communicate without meeting face to face, it's truly frightening. With cold sweat on his forehead, Zephyr felt an indescribable fear of the young king for the first time. How did this guy invent such a thing and manage it day and night? Now he partially understood why the world government sent him here. This is indeed a dangerous guy. Ezekiel was not concerned about Zephyr's reaction. This unruly online world. Even though he is the absolute god of the internet, he still needs the right person to stir up the users. The first reason for spreading the news about Zephyr's arrival is to use his name to scare off the criminals who haven't yet been cleared in Alabasta, and the pirates who intend to cause trouble in Alabasta. Secondly, Ezekiel wants to use public opinion to a certain extent to entice Zephyr. At this point, is there anyone more suitable for fighting Crocodile than Zephyr? After all, Crocodile doesn't know that the Baroque Works Agency has been controlled by his own mobile phone network without any secrets. Everything he does is not a secret to Ezekiel. And after the release of the next app, if Taoxiao is to serve as his megaphone, then the forum should listen to the voice of the people. Then the role of the next app can directly change the world or even eliminate something utterly unnecessary in this world, the log pose. Yes, what Will wants to develop is called the Ocean Map. The Ocean Map app, connected to the network, will record the coordinates of all of Alabasta and nearly 200 islands beyond Alabasta, using the location of all mobile phones. Ezekiel doesn't intend to make it as detailed as the Maps app on Earth, but it will identify islands and even routes between them, completely replacing the effect of log poses. In other words, as long as there is a mobile phone, it's equivalent to having an eternal pose for more than 200 islands. This app will not be free to use, at least not at its initial release. Not only will it not be free, but it will also be expensive. Because those who may need it have the ability to sail the seas, and these people are not short on money. They aren't ordinary people who need protection. At the very least, they are marine traders with some capital. So, how much do the coordinates cost? No, a one-time deal won't be possible. Of course, it should be paid monthly, will Bob with a smile on his face. After all, this thing is as essential in the ocean as food and drink. In the world of One Piece, a log pose can be sold for more than 100,000 berries, while the price of an eternal pose ranges from 100,000 to several million berries. The log pose is easy to damage. And usually, it's not just one log pose per crew, but at least two. And this is costly. More importantly, the log pose needs to reset, and the reset time is unstable. In Little Garden, it can even take a year to reset. In the second half of the Grand Line, due to the overly complex climate and magnetic fields, even 3 log poses are required to determine the position of an island. It was that difficult. After all, I'm not a devil, Ezekiel muttered to himself. Let it be just 10,000 berries per month. So, in a year, that will be 100,000 berries. I believe this price will satisfy the pirates. Additionally, Ezekiel also established a permanent free entry into Alabasta. After all, the development of a country is inseparable from its population. If anyone wants to come, they are welcomed with open arms. Bang! The palace gates flew open, and Will heard Mitty's voice. Mr. Zephyr. Mr. Zephyr. You can't come here. As soon as Ezekiel looked up, he saw Zephyr, who appeared a bit exhausted and immediately understood why he was there. Admiral Zephyr, what's the matter? Ezekiel addressed Zephyr, emphasizing his relationship with the Marines. Zephyr paused, then looked at Will and said, "The comments on the forum are too dangerous. Countless pirates and people with evil hearts can freely speak there. What a terrible scene." "Oh." Ezekiel smiled. "But I can't deprive people of the right to express themselves." "What's it called?" Freedom of speech." Zephyr was stunned and a little at a loss, not knowing how to respond for a moment. "Admiral Zephyr, if you like, I can help you out a bit," Ezekiel offered with a dangerous smile. Zephyr was doomed, he couldn't say no to Ezekiel's offer. Zephyr raised an eyebrow, curiosity written on his face. "I'll give you admin permissions. Currently, even Taoxiao publishers don't have any permissions, including deleting." About an hour later, Zephyr left the palace with his mobile phone in hand. He had accepted the task from the King of Alabasta, and became a temporary network administrator for Alabasta. He still didn't quite understand what this meant, but he figured out a few things. Delete. Ban. That's enough to win an online clash, and it's necessary to use it to stop their dangerous comments. Feeling a desire to enact justice, Zephyr turned on his mobile phone as soon as he returned to his room. As an administrator, he promptly banned 3 users in a row. For a while, the pirate camp on the internet roared in outrage. They also speculated that the guy named Superhero, who kills pirates, might really be Zephyr. After all, everyone knows Zephyr is in Alabasta, and has special permissions that no one else could have. It was evident that Zephyr had asked the royal family of Alabasta, or even the king himself. Damn, it's Zephyr. Is even this bit of freedom destroyed? Due to Zephyr's excessive correction, even those who were initially neutral gradually became dissatisfied. Because in order to maintain authority over the entire forum, he had to carefully review the messages posted by everyone. As he deleted these posts, Zephyr gradually regained a sense of dignity. The nobility killed my innocent child, who can bring me justice? Flag bearer. The people of my country have never done anything wrong, yet they must give their lives to the 4 emperors, and no one can escape from here. Pastry shop owner. A marine conspired with pirates and enslaved our entire village for many years. My mother died at the hands of these pirates. I've lost hope in the world government, little orange cat. These deeply moving questions troubled Zephyr. Gradually, he began to realize that perhaps the problem wasn't with the forum or the people, but with the world government and the Marines. It turns out that this phenomenon, which bears the name of justice, is actually incapable of bringing justice to this world. He turned off his phone, stroked his mechanical arm, and sank into a long silence. He remembered his family members who had been killed, his students who had been slain, and the shame that was difficult to express. It turns out I underestimated the king. Since he took charge of this country, he has given people mobile phones, wanting them to see all this. No wonder the world government is so wary of him, watching him, or even fearing him. Again Zephyr sighed. So, what do you want, Ezekiel Nefertari? Boom. With a roar resembling an explosion, Pel and Shaka parted upon collision. The enormous palace courtyard was in chaos. Mighty already understood what was happening. Terracotta was simply speechless. Out of the smoke emerged Ezekiel in a black suit. He had already pushed Pel and Shaka to their full potential. Now both had 60 gigabytes and 50 gigabytes, and their memory was completely full. They had reached the pinnacle they could achieve in their lives. Their strength was equivalent to a regular vice admiral of the Marines. Under the combined attack of these two, even an experienced vice admiral like Mamunga would not be able to oppose them. Nevertheless, they were still easily defeated by Ezekiel's admiral's haki, which was incomparable to the level of a vice admiral, even if he had no combat experience. Your Majesty, aren't you worried about Zephyr? Pel asked, his eyes wide. Don't worry. He won't reveal our secrets to the world government now. Ezekiel had this confidence because he had been observing Zephyr for the past 2 days, and it was clear that Zephyr had genuinely changed his mind. He continued to grow disillusioned with the world government, uncovering new secrets. Yes, in Ezekiel's eyes, he was at least harmless. Zephyr, in another part of the palace, was awakened. He opened his eyes and instantly activated his haki. This wasn't the first time. In his view, His Majesty the King indeed possesses a secret that instills fear in the world government. Even just by looking at him, you can see a power no weaker than that of a veteran Marine Vice Admiral. Therefore, he shouldn't fear those of the same level, particularly Crocodile. Moreover, the world government does not receive much information about the mobile phone. Naturally, he should have reported to the world government and even taken certain measures, but Zephyr had not done so. He wanted to learn more about this king and his plans to change Alabasta. It's only by coming to Alabasta that you can feel the magnificence of the Grand River of Life project. Throughout the history of mankind, it's a rarity. Never before has there been such an astounding world transformation. Zephyr calls it the engineering transformation of the world. As of now, he had only seen one similar transformation, and that was the Tequila Wolf Bridge, which has existed for 700 years. But that bridge served as punishment, whereas here it is the will of the people. In the end, Zephyr did not want the world government to influence Ezekiel. This king had already received only the depleted millennia-old treasury of Alabasta. Ezekiel did not yet know that in a remote place where hundreds of thousands of people were sweating over the River of Life project, the blind old man with a cane walked with confident steps and finally stopped before the immense project that was nearly complete. The old man raised his head in amazement, scanning the surroundings with his cloudy eyes, as if he could see something. This is an amazing project. This king must be beloved by the people, he said. Since he became blind, he had traveled through hundreds of mountains and thousands of seas, across hundreds of thousands of barren lands. Only when he arrived here did he first feel unmatched vigor and joy in his heart, without any worries or troubles. Every drop of the people's sweat was shed by their own will, with no oppression or subjugation, no whips or kicks. Such a pure land still exists in this world. Impressive. In an instant, thanks to the observation haki, which was trained to the limit, and the special bonus of mental vision, he seemed to see a figure formed from the hearts of the people. A young king. What unusual behavior, he sighed. Hey, blind man, watch your step. At this moment, a young man with a bag in his hands pointed out that there was a stone ridge right in front of the blind man. You. Although my eyes are blind, my heart is not blind, and I will not be hurt. The old man smiled, and then said, if it's convenient, I think I can help. He slowly took the cane with one hand, then lightly touched the ground. In the next moment, the boy felt the heavy bag on his body seem to lose weight. Then there was a loud noise, and the young man turned his head to see countless stones rising from the spot where the old man wanted to pass. The stones returned to place as the blind old man passed by. The old man is not just a blind person, and has a power that can be used. Do. When the bell rang, Ezekiel stopped, took out his own mobile phone, and then heard Cobra's voice, who seemed unsure how to start the conversation. "There's someone unusual here who wants to see you." "How unusual?" asked Will. Cobra stopped, and in front of him was a blind samurai who, with his gestures, was lifting countless tons of building materials. He watched the marvelous scene. "Seems like an admiral. Seems like an admiral." A wave of doubt rose in Ezekiel's heart concerning Cobra's description. An admiral is not some run-of-the-mill figure. If any admiral became a pirate, their bounty would be no less than 2 billion berries. Releasing an admiral into the sea means the world government would become weaker than the 4 emperors. It can't be said for certain that the 3 admirals working together could defeat the 4 emperors. But there is no doubt that the level of an admiral is a true superior combat power in these seas. Ezekiel possesses the mobile phone fruit, which can give his subordinates abilities, but if the potential of his subordinates is low, there's nothing he can do. So far, the highest potential he's encountered in Alabasta is Pell, whose upper limit is only 60 gigabytes. He estimated that the true power of any admiral should be at least 150-200 gigabyte. Who is this strong person that his father has called an admiral? In April 1518 on the original calendar, it was 2 years before Luffy would set out to sea. The capital of Alabasta, Ulubarna. Crowds of citizens gathered on the rebuilt Main Street, King's Avenue. This is the day their supreme king embarks on his procession. Only on this day each month do they have the opportunity to meet the king. Even though compared to the kind and benevolent former King Cobra, the new king now maintains more distance and rarely communicates directly with the people, the citizens clearly value the current king more and follow him, because he was the first to truly show them what it means to be king. A king is a solitary person, a person who bears everything, a god who walks the earth, and in some sense, he is omnipotent. He was able to crush the warlords, form hundreds of thousands of troops, and use countless manpower to create the River of Life. Will waved his hands, greeting his people. Over several months he has gained unprecedented authority in Alabasta, especially in the capital Ulubarna. It can be said that he is a true god. The blind warrior has learned a lot about the king during this time, not just about the River of Life, but also about mobile phones, banks, new currencies, handling rebels, and restructuring the country. Everything is so well organized. A country that once seemed so impoverished has become prosperous under this king's hands. For what reason? I truly want to meet this king soon. Mr. Samurai, you can simply wait in the palace. Cobra personally escorted Fujitora to the palace just in time for the king's procession. It might take an hour. Don't worry, said the samurai with a gentle smile in his blind eyes. It's enough to see someone from a distance. The kindness in the king's heart was so great that Fujitora wanted to communicate with him personally. He was astonished, and as soon as he finished speaking, his blind eyes narrowed. With his advanced observation haki, he could see it from a distance. This great existence, like a huge burning flame, was surrounded by people. With one glance he understood that the kindness in the king's heart was completely different from the kindness of anyone else in this world. It was like a blazing sun rising from a patch of multicolored stars. What exactly is this? He kept asking himself. Such a complex and unfathomable immense world cannot be grasped even with the mind, but the concept of order and goodness in it is far beyond the understanding of any sage in this world. The blind warrior desperately wanted to see the incomparable golden treasure hidden in the king's heart: fire, sun, kindness, order, strength, glory, harmony. What an incredible heart. The blind samurai couldn't help but mutter. Never before have I seen anything like this. And a heart that could never have been formed in this world, how was it created? Thinking about this, the blind warrior looked at the old King Cobra. And what an amazing father. He felt like Ezekiel had no connection to Cobra. He seemed like a teenager, existing by himself in this world. He was absolutely unique in this world. After all, there is no such power in the world of pirates. Such was the ability of the blind samurai. Because he was blind, he possessed a pair of eyes that could see through people's hearts. For decades, he sought faith and a chance to save the world. He met Roger. He fought against the most vicious thugs in the world, had dialogues with the leader of the Revolutionary Army trying to save the world, and also met the kind-hearted mermaid princess. But their beliefs and ideas remain within a realm comprehensible to the blind samurai, and he knows it's not quite right. But this king is different. There is no doubt that he has found a king who is willing to give his life for a cause. This is the samurai's conviction, as well as his faith. Your Majesty, the old King Cobra is waiting for you, Pell reminded Ezekiel. Ezekiel looked into the distance and saw a blind man watching him from afar. He was stunned and finally understood who his father was talking about, someone who resembled an admiral. Fujitora smiled. Ezekiel got that after all, Fujitora could see through people's hearts, but even a talent like Luffy had barely earned his approval. Why did I earn his respect? Pondering this, Ezekiel was astonished. As the king approached, this seemingly ordinary yet most extraordinary blind warrior unexpectedly pulled a knife from his staff with his right hand, blade down, stuck it into the ground, slightly bowed, and knelt. This is a sign of samurai loyalty in this world. Fujitora bowed his head. What had moved this powerful man in the end? Ezekiel's expression became serious. He raised his hand. All noise and shouting ceased, and people watched as he walked step by step towards someone. That's King Cobra. Someone traced the direction he was moving in, and thought he was going towards Cobra. Cobra looked at Fujitora with satisfaction and sighed. My son, I did not fail you. The presumed combat power of an admiral level. Fujitora didn't say a word, he calmly awaited Ezekiel. Ezekiel finally approached him. It seemed that this powerful blind warrior couldn't wait for Ezekiel's arrival, and for Ezekiel it directly resolved one of his most difficult problems at present. What do you think of Alabasta, Fujitora? He placed his hand on the samurai's shoulder and asked with heartfelt excitement. Fujitora was taken aback and simply replied, magnificent. Then he stood up and slightly bowed. Fujitora smiled, determined to do everything within his power. Fujitora 220 GB / 250 GB. Zushi Zushi no Mi, the Gravity Fruit 100 GB. Enhanced Armament Haki, 20 GB. Enhanced Observation Haki, 80 GB. Advanced Swordsmanship, 20 GB. Although all are at Admiral level, Fujitora with 220 GB might not be able to defeat Okiji at 160 GB. However, it should be noted that the 52-year-old Fujitora has 5 more years of experience than the 47-year-old Okiji. With Fujitora's support, Alabasta will possess genuine top-tier combat strength, a powerful man with peak combat experience. Ezekiel successfully inherited the Gravity Fruit ability, which finally convinced him that he could possess multiple fruit abilities. Will 440 GB / 600 GB. Enhanced Freezing Fruit 100 GB. Enhanced Gravity Fruit 100 GB. Swordsman Skill Enhancement 60 GB. Enhanced Armament Haki, 20 GB. Enhanced Observation Haki, 80 GB. Enhanced Rokushiki, 20 GB. Ezekiel's power was successfully increased once again. Now he dared to say that if he had the level of combat experience Fujitora had, he would be no worse than the 4 emperors. Unfortunately, he currently lacked that experience, so he would only be comparable to an admiral in actual battles. This is a problem that will be solved sooner or later, Ezekiel got to himself. Since he can acquire multiple abilities, he does not intend to give up on powerful fruits such as Gurgur no Mi, Whitebeard's Earthquake Fruit, Yami Yami no Mi teaches Dark Fruit, Goro Goro no Mi, Enel's Lightning Fruit, Mira Mira no Mi, Ace's Flame Fruit, Sora Sora no Mi, Big Mom's Soul Fruit. Due to the emergence of competitors, Will had to name his phone Alabasta Royal Mobile Phone of Alabasta. In Alubarna, in the western part of Alabasta, a world government phone shop opened. Although they simply called this thing a mechanical den mushi, the name Alabasta's mobile phone was too grand, so they also had to come up with a name to distinguish their mobile phones from Alabasta Royal Mobile. The store's name was changed to Justice Mobile Phones. Ezekiel was annoyed by this name but was forced to promote this phone in newspaper headlines mainly to emphasize its simplicity, single functionality, limited capabilities, high price, and other downsides. This led to sluggish sales of Justice mobile phones. Damn it. We've already lowered the price and are incurring losses, but these commoners just can't grasp the quality. The store manager, World Government Special Agent C. Bird angrily slammed the Alabasta Royal mobile phone he held in his hand and stormed out of the forum. In recent days, he was close to fainting. No options after all, even we ourselves use Alabasta Royal mobile phones, said another agent, Red Beast. We can only lower the price again. I've already mentioned this. And it seems that in the engineering field of rivers of life, there are highly specialized guys. It looks like they have special ties with Alabasta, and they seem loyal to their king, who provides them with great support. Highly specialized. That's the blind wandering warrior who helps Alabasta. According to intelligence, he alone is worth hundreds of thousands of people. That guy. How do we deal with him? There's Admiral Zephyr here, but that other one. He could turn everything upside down. Although, no matter how strong he is, he can't stand against an admiral. Red Beast sneered coldly. Then what price should we set for our Justice mobile phones? C. Bird asked again after a moment of silence. Up to 1,000 berries, and they should be launched alongside the recently developed enhancement products by Dr. Vegapunk, said Red Beast. Vegapunk had been focusing all this time on understanding the Alabasta Royal mobile phone and was very interested in it. But Ezekiel's mobile phones were never purely technological. No matter how brilliant Vegapunk was, he could only emulate some functions of the Alabasta Royal mobile phones. Finally, the construction of base stations began, which means that from now on, as long as base stations are set up every 30 kilometers, all Justice mobile phones within range can make regular calls. Unfortunately, the drawbacks are also apparent. They still can't transmit videos or even photos. The provided signal allows only for phone calls and text messages. It must be said that in this world, where there are no mobile phones, only den mushi, selling mobile phones does make money. Even if they are sold at a loss, the monthly fees still allow the world government to earn a lot of money. That's why the world government is increasingly concerned about Alabasta. They have already got it all through. If they acquire this mobile phone technology and have a worldwide channel to sell the Justice mobile phones, it may take very little time to amass a fortune globally, which is utterly impossible for anyone else. Looking at the data showing mobile phone sales gradually reaching 10 million, Ezekiel understood that it was time to sell to the external market. Although Alabasta has a population of over 200 million under normal circumstances, a family would buy only one mobile phone. In other words, in a world where an average family consists of 5 or 6 people, there are about 40 million families in Alabasta. How many of these 40 million families are still struggling for survival while he is taking Alabasta's economy to a new level? He really wants to launch the ocean map now, but as soon as it starts expanding globally, the workforce will definitely be insufficient. According to his initial plan, he would appoint presidents for his applications. The forum is meant for Zephyr, who has a sense of justice for support and harmony. He intends to involve Morgans with the news application. Previously there was Crocodile, Zephyr who was not entirely loyal, and the River of Life project with hundreds of thousands of people. Additionally, the schemes of the world government were quite distracting. All of this drained too much of Ezekiel's energy. There was no one in Alabasta who could help him become stronger. But now, thinking about this, Ezekiel clenched his fist and slammed it on the table, and the table shattered into pieces in an instant. The time has come. Today I will use this to achieve supremacy. Original calendar year 1518 May. For the first time outside of Alubarna, a loud noise erupted in the center specifically built by the world government in the desert. Mama. Mama. I'm so bored. A hefty blonde with 2 long blonde braids cried out. When he shook, the entire ground trembled, showcasing his terrifying strength. Off to the side stood an exceptionally small figure. An old woman, wrinkled, clad in a leopard coat, dark glasses, and leaning on crutches. Shut up, my dear son. If you're bored, go entertain yourself. Alabasta is very wealthy now. You can have as much money as you want here. The woman said. smiling as she closed an article about the sea on her Alabasta Royal mobile phone. Okay, Mama. The giant man obeyed the woman and knocked down the door. In the next moment, several members of the world government, dressed in CP cloaks to conceal their identities, stopped him, and one of them shouted, "Miss Bacon. Edward Weevil. The world government made an agreement with you. Do you want to break the agreement?" Miss Bacon smiled, "I didn't say that. The world government wanted us to come and then take action to destroy the country and kill the members of their royal family at the right time, but..." At this moment, Miss Bacon's face became grim and terrifying. "How long have I been here? How long have I waited? 3 months. What am I waiting for? For that old fool Zephyr. Admiral Zephyr will cooperate with you when necessary." Miss Bacon interrupted the CP agent before he could finish speaking. "Shut up," Miss Bacon said angrily. "Am I supposed to watch as my money slips away? That bastard used hundreds of billions of berries. That's all my money. These 3 months." Miss Bacon activated the calculator function built into her phone. Very few people use these actually very useful features. It must be said that she is a smart woman. At least 10 billion berries have been lost, and now I heard that someone arrived in Alabasta who can speed up the project, but I'm already losing at least 100 million berries every day. That's hundreds of millions of berries, no thousands of millions of berries. Your world government already said it, I can legally pillage everything here. But it's not the right time yet. Enough. We're pirates. We're not your dogs, we're not the Marines. My dear son, get him," Miss Bacon said angrily. In the next moment, a large hand struck the CP agent's body with a loud noise, and his battered body flew far into the desert. It is unknown whether the agent survived or not. "Mama. Are we going to play?" asked Edward Weevil. "Yes, my dear son, I want to take you with me to have a good time." Miss Bacon's expression turned tender again. At this moment Zephyr, who was resting, suddenly heard a knock on the door. Boom. "Mr. Zephyr, are you here? His Majesty the King invites you." It was the voice of Mighty. Huh. Zephyr was taken aback. He hadn't used observation haki for a long time, as it was considered a sign of respect for the palace host. What did the king need at this hour? He followed Mighty to the center of the palace. The vast palace felt a bit chilly, carrying an atmosphere of 1,000 years of emptiness. Yet, the rich culture of Alabasta could be felt. Exquisite hieroglyphs, intricate decorations, the aura of antiquity and nobility. Zephyr's gaze was drawn to Ezekiel, and then he noticed a blind man dressed like a wandering warrior standing next to him. The man had an unusual aura, but Zephyr was certain that he was not a pirate, so he smiled at him. "What's happening, Your Majesty the King?" "Mr. Zephyr, you call me Your Majesty the King? That's too pompous," Ezekiel replied gently. Sunlight streamed onto the throne room floor through the large trees outside the window. Ezekiel stood up and approached Zephyr. "You can just call me by my name." Zephyr had recently given Ezekiel advice on conducting battles and had also offered Pell and others much guidance, along with his administrative work at the forum, which had become indispensable. "Then I'll call you Your Majesty Ezekiel," Zephyr laughed, feeling like a trusted confidant. "Let me introduce you. This is a new significant person in Alabasta," Fujitora said. Ezekiel. Fujitora smiled, and gave a slight bow as acknowledgement. Zephyr was polite as well, and introduced himself. "Zephyr. It seems you are the strong individual that rumors have been circulating about on the forum lately. Mr. Zephyr has also recently provided me with great help and advice." Ezekiel approached Zephyr with a smile, and then slowly bowed. "Teacher Zephyr." Zephyr looked touched. The title teacher held unusual significance for him. Over the decades he had trained countless students. The word teacher made him feel a bit uneasy. At that moment, Zephyr's heart suddenly clenched as he saw Fujitora draw his sword. A massive force of gravity crashed down on Zephyr, and the floor beneath his feet shattered into countless pieces. But before he could react, a terrifying frost already wrapped around his ankles. "Ice time capsule," Will's cold voice declared. Zephyr's eyes widened in disbelief, and he looked at Will. His mind was chaotic, filled with countless whys. Why? Why does Will possess the power of the freezing fruit? Why are Ezekiel's abilities so strong that he can't break free? Why is this blind samurai so powerful? Most importantly, why are they joining forces to attack him? Didn't he call me teacher? Why did they launch a sudden attack? What's their goal? Aren't they afraid of the world government and the Marines? If the world government considers them enemies, they could be wiped out in an instant. At this moment, Zephyr was completely stunned. He couldn't believe that Ezekiel had attacked him. Admiral-level combat power clashed with combat power of the same level, and one triumphed with the element of surprise. Why? Zephyr was completely frozen, still staring at Ezekiel, and at that moment, a sense of betrayal crept into his heart. Anger, disbelief, shock, surprise. Mr. Zephyr, Ezekiel's smile was unnerving. My teacher Zephyr. Do you want to ask why? Oh, how unfortunate, are you still so naive? Have you forgotten why you came here? With a sigh in his heart, Zephyr's eyes gradually dimmed, and his observation haki voluntarily withdrew. Yes, he had come to Alabasta with impure intentions. Frozen, Zephyr remained in the palace, watching as the two of them left. Ezekiel, having exited the main hall, removed the mantle symbolizing the status of king and listened with a smile to the inquiries. Is everything all right? This man had already ventured out to sea when we were young. He was referring to Admiral Zephyr, who wasn't easily lured into a trap. But Zephyr hadn't suspected that the king, in whom he had placed unconditional trust, would attack him. Although he had witnessed much over the past decades and had long understood that one cannot simply trust what they see, it turns out he was ready to make the same mistakes over and over again. I never underestimated this old man. Ezekiel pulled out a pair of white gloves and put them on. If he fights, he doesn't want to come into contact with the enemy's dirty body and blood. This time he wants to kill two birds with one stone. Boom. A powerful explosion thundered in the direction of Alubarna's walls. With a smile on his face, Ezekiel activated his observation haki and detected the intrusion of a powerful enemy. Someone is breaching the city wall, he said. Well, Ezekiel said calmly, the person we will deal with this time, perhaps you've heard his name, Junior Whitebeard, Edward Weevil. In fact, when Edward Weevil was already sailing the seas and claimed to be Junior Whitebeard, despite his high bounty and good strength, he had never done anything that would shake the world, so he was still not as famous as he would be later. Junior Whitebeard. Fujitara just smiled in response and repeated the nickname. Junior Whitebeard, not Whitebeard. Stop. This is Alabasta. A soldier from the Royal Army hadn't finished speaking when he was struck and flung from his post, creating a crater in the ground upon impact. No one would have got that pirates would attack directly at Alubarna. This is the royal capital. A place protected by Admiral Zephyr. The place where the strongest commander of the guard, and one of the strongest divisions of the 6 armies, hell is. There are even more than tens of thousands of military personnel stationed there. Mama. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Cried Junior Whitebeard Edward Weevil with childlike wails. You idiot, head straight to the palace and grab the king. Then you'll have more food than you can even swallow. Miss Bacon kicked him hard in the leg. Ouch, it hurts. That hurts. I want to eat meat. Edward Weevil, enraged, smashed a large portion of the city wall with one foot and stormed into the city. Don't even think about entering Alubarna. In the next moment, the dark figure flew up and kicked at Weevil with a leg covered in haki. It was Pell. Weevil blocked the leg with his hand, his haki was even stronger, and he knocked Pell out. Although Pell possessed Vice Admiral level strength, he was not easy to defeat. This guy has power surpassing crocodiles. With the growth of observation haki, Pell's abilities were also constantly improving. Although he couldn't precisely gauge Weevil's power, he understood very clearly this was someone he couldn't defeat. Even though it was just a simple clash, he could already tell that this guy was as strong as a monster. But no matter what, he had to grit his teeth and try his best. They clashed again, and massive vibrations spread everywhere. You idiot. Take down this guy. Miss Bacon scolded him unceremoniously. Edward Weevil immediately roared, raised his blade high, and struck with unprecedented force. But at that moment, Weevil suddenly noticed a shadow at his feet, and at the same time, a buzzing sound was heard above his head as if something was rapidly approaching. He looked up in surprise. It was a meteorite 10 times larger than himself. Faced with the threat to his life, Weevil roared and directed his blade towards the meteorite. Bang! The massive meteorite instantly split in half. At this moment, two people appeared near Pell. One was a young man who looked unusually youthful, and the other was a blind man holding a sword. Pell immediately bowed his head to the young man and respectfully saluted him, saying, "Your Majesty." Miss Backen was excited. "That's him. Weevil, kill the others and capture that guy." Weevil, breathing heavily, turned his head and suspiciously asked, "Which one?" Miss Backen's head throbbed with visible blue veins. "Idiot. The youngest one." "Which one is the youngest?" Weevil was puzzled. "The small one." Miss Backen raged. Edward Weevil looked left and right, finally fixing his gaze on Ezekiel and suddenly realized. "Oh." Ezekiel calmly said with a smile on his face. "Fujitara. Kill him. Is it necessary to point out a person's flaws? Besides, he's not that short, he's 1 meter 80 centimeters tall. He's just relatively shorter compared to this giant man over 6 meters tall. Infernal journey." Fujitara raised his sword. Edward Weevil collapsed to the ground and was firmly pinned down by the terrifying gravity. He really was a monster known as Junior Whitebeard, but he couldn't move. "Mom. I feel so uncomfortable." "Trash. Get up," screamed Miss Backen. Weevil roared and stood up, resisting the gravity, and the ground beneath his feet shattered layer by layer. Clank. For more fanfictions and 60+ chapters in advance, follow me on Patreon. The link is in the description below.